Coming up in the next 2 hours, the face-off between Nigerian university lecturers and the federal government may be drawing to a close following the government's agreement to exempt them from the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System, IPPIS, and pay 65 billion naira to meet their demands. Plus, after weeks of denial, the Nigerian Army yesterday finally admitted to deploying live ammunition to disperse peaceful #EndSARS protesters at the Lekki Toll Plaza on the night of October the 20th. This came after the defection of Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi to the ruling All Progressives Congress from the People's Democratic Party ignited the politics of 2023 and the quest by the Southeast to produce the next Nigerian president. And fears mount over a long and bitter war in the Horn of Africa as Ethiopian national forces encounter heavy resistance in the northern region of Tigray. Welcome back to THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Joining me now in the studio are Professor Bola Akinteruwa, DG Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, Chike Ogia, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. But before the panelists join the conversation, let's take the next major story. Following months of negotiations, the Nigerian government last Friday agreed to exclude members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, from the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System, IPPIS, raising hopes that the university lecturers will end their 8-month-long strike. The government also agreed to pay the lecturers their outstanding salaries using an older payment platform, the Government Integrated Financial and Management Information System. ASUU, which was offered 65 billion, is seeking to address the issue of earned allowances and revitalization of universities with the funds. Meanwhile, they approved visitation panels to oversee the activities of all federal universities in the country will be inaugurated this week and are expected to conclude their assignments on or before December 31st, 2020. With some glimmer of hope in the horizon that universities may be reopened soon, however, the big question that continues to linger is, will the most recent agreement reached with the lecturers be enough to appease them, given their penchant for embarking on strikes at the slightest drop of a hat? Well, here to discuss all this and the need for wholesale reforms of the Nigerian university system is the Minister of Labor and Employment and former Governor of Anambra State, Senator Chris Ngige. Welcome to the show, Senator Ngige, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
good afternoon, Senator. Well, very quickly, the newspapers reported first that a truce has been reached with ASUU, and the government has agreed to take ASUU out of IPPIS, and that certain other agreements have been reached. But, you know, there was also a story attributed to you that you said the report of the meeting held with ASUU on Friday was taken somewhat out of context, and that it's not true that the government has already acceded to ASUU's request, that it is a UTAS or nothing. What exactly is a true story?
Well, the true story can be seen from the communique or the offer letter given to ASUU. It's in black and white. We wrote it. And it's important everybody realize that for the purposes of this dispute, I'm just a reconciliator or conciliator. But being a part of government, I always know what government offer is. I'm not the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, neither am I the Accountant General of the Federation. The Accountant General of the Federation, public servant, he doesn't speak. So I actually say what government had offered. That doesn't mean I have taken side, or like the president of ASUU described me in one of his interviews. He said that I have relinquished the job of a conciliator to be a conspirator. I take it to be a joke anyway. But the true position is, number one, prior to the Friday meeting, government gave ASUU an offer of 30 billion for earned allowances in the universities for all the unions, 20 billion for Revitalization Fund to show government good faith that we are still part of whatever MOU you reached with government in 2013. So aggregately, the money is 50 billion. Now at the Friday meeting, positions were shifted because ASUU said they had shifted from their demand of 220 billion to 50% of it, which is 110 billion. At the last meeting, the government side said, we don't have this kind of money to give. But at the meeting of Friday, what government has offered, and which is what ASUU is taking back to their people, is, number one, we have 2 compartments of offer on revitalization and end allowances. These 2 compartments are compartment A, that 25 billion, up from 20 billion for revitalization, and 40 billion for end allowances for all the unions, making an aggregate sum of 65 billion. That's compartment A. Compartment B, we can raise the revitalization up to 30 billion, and then the end allowances will drop to 35. Again, you have 65. So they have a choice to make. They now say they will have to take it back to their organs for them to decide. We had earlier on trashed the issue of the Committee on Renegotiation. Government side presented their letters of appointment to those involved. ASUU was satisfied. Visitation panel. Government also said they will publish the names of the visitation panel members, which have been approved by Mr. President, so that the people can start preparation for their visitation, which is supposed to terminate in December 31. Visitation panels are panels put up by the visitor to the universities, who is the president of the nation for all the federal universities, and they are there to check what has transpired in those universities for the last 10 years. So they are doing a work of 5 years first stanza and another 5 years second stanza, starting from 2010. ASUU is satisfied, the publication will come. The area of UTAS and IPPIS payment, I take it holistic, or I take them pari passu. At UTAS is the University Transparent Solution platform, which, which ASUU said their scientists have developed. They have developed the software. Government have given approval to NIDA, which is the technology agency in charge of government softwares and everything on information technology. So they have started the process. ASUU are giving them the materials they needed. ASUU technologists have met with the people in NIDA, and by the close of work that Thursday, ASUU reported that they are satisfied with the progress being made. NIDA has given me a preliminary report. I'm expecting this a secondary report or final report. We are all satisfied. Now, what we are saying now, there's a problem. Within the transition period, all these end allowances we are talking about, how do we pay it? The salaries you're asking us to lift embargo on, because their salaries were embargoed after June when they refused to go back to work. There's a law of no work, no pay, Section 43 of Industrial Dispute Act, and even by ILO principles at work. If you are not working, you don't receive any compensation from your employer. So these are known laws and principles and conventions of the ILO. So we assured ASUU, because they made a request, that they be paid those money. And we told them there is a law like this. And this law have caught up with you. They now pledged to the meeting that they are, unlike medical doctors and nurses, who when they go on strike, people lose their lives. And you can't bring back life anymore. That they will teach extra periods, day and night, to make sure that nobody loses any semester for their students. So that's their pledge. Based on that pledge, we said to them, we will now take your pledge and your assertion to a higher authority for us to get the relevant approval between Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Education for these withheld salaries to be released. So that's where we are on that. But if the approval is gotten, how again do we pay you? Because you are not on IPPIS and you refuse to go. Only a section of your members are on IPPIS. So we now agree that for those people who have not been captured on IPPIS, because a lot of them are on IPPIS, a lot are on IPPIS, those who are not on IPPIS, there was a method which the Accountant General used to pay them the compassionate payments during the COVID period. The President approved the compassionate payment of 2-3 months, but even at that, they were paid from that February into June. They had worked in February, so it's not part of it. So March, April, May, June, those 4 months were compassionate. So Accountant General said we had to do a hybrid into NIMSI portal, and then that's what we used to pay. So the meeting agreed, you use this same method and pay them for the period of the transition when the UTAS is undergoing integrity tests at NIDA and the cyber security tests in the Office of National Security Advisor. So these are the major issues. So the screaming headlines like, oh, government has abandoned IPPIS is not entirely correct. Because there is no payment module now in existence in the government system that will not have a handshake with IPPIS.
Well, Senator, thank you very much for these clarifications. But you quoted Professor Biodun Oguyemi saying that you are a conspirator, not a conciliator. He, in fact, went a step further to say that, as far as ASUU is concerned, that you are playing hide-and-seek game with UTAS. And his argument is that he shouldn't take NIDA up to 6 or 8 weeks to be able to resolve whatever they want to do in terms of testing the integrity of UTAS. That's one. The 65 billion naira, how will it be shared? Because, or is it strictly for ASUU alone? Because there are other members, other unions within the university system, SANU, NASU, and NAIT, who are also saying that they have issues in terms of allowances. And it doesn't look like ASUU is ready to share, particularly with regard to and allowances. Hello? Senator, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the last stanza of your wordings, I lost you.
No, I was asking the second part of it about whether there is a sharing template for the Revitalization Fund and the earned allowances. among the various unions within the university system. Because ASUU is saying that it probably cannot share with SANU, NASU, and other unions. Is there a separate arrangement for these other unions who have also raised concerns about unpaid allowances?
Ruben, His Excellency Ruben, I'll call you His Excellency. Because you will have been deputy governor in Ogun State now. if God has supported it.
Thank you, sir.
This is not the first time they are sharing revitalization university by university and end allowances between us. Ruben is still laughing because I call him His Excellency. Ruben, we pray to God you get there, don't worry.
I claim it. Thank you.
So this is not the first time. And luckily, like I told you again, ASUU did not contest the issue of sharing again with their brothers in the university system. Because the issue is clear. If they don't share with them, because those other people have allowances that are due to them. We had an episode in the first 2017 experience. We gave them 20 billion, and ASUU, I think, took about 18 billion, while this other group were on strike. So by the time they rushed back from their strike, there was no money left. I think only 2 billion left on the 20 billion. So government had to give an additional 5 billion. And later on, when we discovered again that in Nsukka, Ilori, where the lecturers did not participate in the strike with ASUU, and ASUU excluded them from the sharing, we made additional 3 billion available so that you don't punish those who have gone to work. So altogether, we had 28 billion that year. So, but that taught National University Commission and the Ministry of Education a big lesson. So they put up a template for sharing. So that template is there. So even if you give them 10 naira now, there's a template for sharing it.
Well,
so you don't worry about that one. Well, then the other aspect of the question.
UTAS, yes.
UTAS. I am not a computer scientist. I'm not a guru. I will only rely on what these experts in NIDA tells me or writes to me. The same thing they are writing to me, they will copy it to ASUU, they will copy education, they will copy Accountant General of the Federation. But as the conciliator, like I've told you, we have Accountant General who doesn't talk to the press. We have a Minister of Finance who is very, very, very busy with the economy, budget, and talking with our creditors and those who are helping us fund the budget. And so it's very embroiled in so many bilateral meetings on finance. So it is me who even say what the government side situation is. Education ministry, a lot of them, they're the direct employers of ASUU, but they run away because of the way the discussions go with ASUU. A lot of the time, the discussions sometimes go very abrasive and pugilistic and pugnacious. So not many people like to discuss. But it's my job. I won't run away from it. It's my, and much more importantly, Ruben, I have children in public school, biological, three. They're in public school, they're not in private universities. Like, unlike ASUU members, most of their children are in private universities. Mine are here, 3. Those I put on scholarship, about 15 of them, also schools. So I'm a very big stakeholder in the public school system, the tertiary public school system. I am. So when ASUU say, oh, politicians have taken their children abroad, that's why they don't care. Chris Ngige cares because my children are not abroad, even though they have dual nationality. 2 of them are American citizens. They can be in America. But I chose them to be here with me.
Well, Senator, did you get an impression?
Point. So ASUU cannot accuse me of not being nationalistic enough. So anything that will help the university system here, I'm in the forefront. I like UTAS because if UTAS works, it's a homegrown technology, it's a homegrown thing. And that helps Presidential Order 3 and 5. And we will save our foreign exchange because it's a homegrown thing. So let ASUU president not call me a conspirator. I'm more nationalistic about the public university than even him and his members. I am.
Well, Senator, let's talk about the Revitalization Fund. You've increased what you have offered ASUU. Did you get an impression that they are impressed? Because the original argument is that in the 2013 Memorandum of Understanding, what was agreed with the federal government was a sum of 1.3 trillion naira over a period of 6 years, and that ASUU is supposed to be given 220 billion per annum. And now they are being offered just what looks like a token. Do you think they will accept it?
Ruben, they will accept. 2 reasons. Number one, they know that Onosode panel, NIS panel, did this assessment in 2009. 2009, it could not be taken off the ground by the government at the day of the day. In 2013, it was renegotiated by the Jonathanian government. And the Jonathan government said, okay, under pressure, they accepted 1.3 trillion. They couldn't pay. They were pressurized to pay. They paid 200 billion. So you now have 1.1 billion left, spread over 5 years, and that comes to 220 billion per year. They didn't pay anything in 2014. They didn't pay anything in 2015. Even though oil, the mainstay of our economy, was selling at 120 billion a barrel. And we were producing 2.5 million barrels per day. But today, or since 2015 that this government came in, the militancy in the Niger Delta dropped our production from 2.2 billion to 2 billion, from 2 million barrels per day, from 2 million barrels per day to 1.5, 1 million, and at a point 700,000 barrels a day. The price moved from 120, 100, 80, 70, and in that our 2015 to 2016, $40 a barrel, 35, 30, and Nigeria went into recession. Because that was the mainstay of the economy, mono economy. So this government has said, we don't want to say that we are opting out of this agreement or memorandum of understanding, because that's an MOU they have. And by ILO principles, employer-employee relationship, any collective bargaining agreement can be renegotiated. Especially when you renegotiate it based on the capacity or ability to pay. But the government says, we need this thing because we need the university's system to be funded. So we now agree with ASUU, put up a NIS committee. There are members of the NIS committee. That NIS committee have given sources of funding, possible sources of funding. Those sources of funding were taken to government, and government saw that a lot of these sources of funding mentioned there were not implementable. For example, we have VAT there. 80% or 85% of VAT collection goes to the states. It's only 15% that reside with the federal government. There is a stamp duty there. Stamp duty is not collectible by education or any other person, except with the relevant agencies that collect them, FIRS. Up till now, that is not even being cleared. So these 2 sources of funding that ASUU prescribed, in all honesty, which government says we can do, it was not possible for education to push it through, the Ministry of Education. So the next committee that is still in existence put up another validation workshop, and they are still at work. We need them to get possible sources of funding, major of which now is the private sector. Government alone cannot sustain the tertiary education system or even education system in Nigeria. Do not also forget, Ruben, that education is on the concurrent list. So even if the federal government has not been doing enough, how about the state government? Even their state universities are in worse state. That is why ASUU raised the issue of state universities and proliferation. In the committee, we agreed in the negotiating table that the NUC Act has to be amended. And the committee has been set in place, and they're working on it. ASUU has membership in that committee, so that we can stem the proliferation. You have places like Ondo State having 2 universities. Why don't you take one only and fund? We have Oyo and Oshun quarreling over this and that. So there are so many people that are doing the university system for prestige sake. It should stop.
But Senator, is the federal government in a position to dictate to state governments the number of universities or tertiary institutions that they can set up in a federal system?
We are not. We are not. No, we are not. It's on concurrent list. But the NUC that registers universities and can remove accreditation is in a position to do so, to maintain quality.
Well, the ASUU leadership, after the offers from the federal government, said that they will consult with their various unions and members, and that they will get back to the federal government by next week Friday. That's this week Friday. Are you optimistic that they will accept the offers? And if they do not, what options are available to the federal government? Because you've been quoted as saying you will explore other channels, including invoking relevant sections of the labor law.
Well, there are professors there. They read the labor laws. They know what the labor laws say. They are intelligent persons. They are intelligent men. And I'm not a pessimist. I feel that even this offer they got is one of the best they have ever gotten since I started conciliation on that bit in the ministry. So for me, I do not see why they should not accept it. Everything they asked for have been granted. If it is the quantum of money, it's work in progress. So I don't think they should say the offer is not good. But besides, I told them before they left that asking the nation, asking your students to wait from Friday to Friday is not fair, it's unfair. They should come back to us by Tuesday. They have done that before. When we went to the Senate and negotiated and discussed with the Senate President, the offer was made to them on a Thursday. They came back to us on a Tuesday. So that's what I expect them to do this time around. And if they do so this time around, the nation will appreciate them. The nation will regard them as a patriotic citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So I expect them to get back to me much earlier than Friday. I expect them to start talking to me by Tuesday. That's what I told them there at the table.
But even with all of this, the federal government is being accused of adopting divide and rule tactics. It was said, for example, that you met with the Congress of Nigerian University Academics, CONUA, and that the attempt, the plan is to register an alternate body that federal government can be relating with. How much of a truth is in this? And is that really a divide and rule tactics? Fight ASUU, create another body?
No, Ruben, it's not a divide and rule tactics. Anybody who knows me, they know me that I'm a man of law and order. The president we have now, too, is a man who sticks to the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And even the laws flowing out from the Constitution, like Acts of National Assembly, Mr. President sticks to them religiously. In fact, if he's in doubt, he will refer the matter to the Attorney General of the Federation for advice. You'll be surprised. Very little things, and once law is involved, he will refer it to the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. So, for me, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Section 40 of that Constitution gives us right to free assembly, free association of individuals, to the extent that you can form, one, political parties that will be subject to registration by INEC. Two, you can form trade unions of workers, to the extent that the Registry of Trade Unions in the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment will register that trade union. It's there. That's what the Section 40 is all about. So this group of people had applied since 2 years, since 2018, and said, we are not members of ASUU. We are lecturers in the university system. We have gathered ourselves together. We want you to register and recognize us as a trade union. By the way, ASUU is a trade union. It's registered as a trade union in my place and is affiliated to the Nigerian Labour Congress. There is voluntarism in unionship. The principle of voluntarism by ILO. You go where you think you want to be. You can even opt not to be in any union. It's allowed. It's just like Nigerians, Nigerian population, not everybody wants to be a member of a political party. It's me and you, Ruben. I opted for APC. You opted for PDP. Me and you, we now go to INEC on that pedestal, with the platform. So these people said, we are not members of ASUU. Give us our own union. I did the right thing. 2019, I put up a committee to look into their request. That committee was working till I left government in that same 2019. This 2020, they have come and visited the ministry, interacted with the committee, but before the COVID, even before this ASUU strike and ASUU palaver, they had come. So I have now given the committee a marching order because they have been going backward and forward. They formed a subcommittee of that committee, and they are working and waiting for their reports to be collated. I said now that I need the reports in 4 weeks. That's what I've done. So I don't know why you will call it divide and rule. Let me see what they've advised me.
Well, Senator,
I will not do anything that is outside the framework of the law.
Well, talking about the law, one of the major issues that the ASUU is talking about is that university autonomy is what they are fighting for. And there is a University Autonomy Act 2007. And for the federal government to even contemplate IPPIS at all is a violation of that enabling law. What do you say to that?
Ruben, I'm not a lawyer, but law, according to Chief Rotimi Williams, who is the doyen of law in Nigeria, is 99% common sense. And when you are applying the law, you don't apply it in such a way that the society is destabilized. That's why the judges in court will give you some judgments, which they say is judgment given to preserve the integrity of society. So, ASUU is quoting that particular aspect. And they are doing it especially when it suits them. There is a man called Babalaki who was chairman of the University of Lagos. He was chairman governing council. The law you are quoting, that the ASUU people are quoting, says that the governing council can appoint and remove a vice-chancellor. The supreme law of the land in 171 gives the president the powers to appoint and remove vice-chancellors. So you cannot see what I'm saying. So the outflow from the Constitution is the act which you and ASUU have quoted now. But the bigger law, the enveloping law, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 171, gives that same president the power to remove the vice-chancellor without recourse to anybody. Yes, because the vice-chancellor formed under the category of people called chief executives of federal parastatal, federal agencies, and federal institutions. I don't know whether you are with me. So this other law on autonomy, again for the council, was done in a way that the council will generate the fund and money and be less dependent on the government and the government budget and generate money and pay their workers, just like it's done overseas. Are they paying their workers today? The answer is no. They're not paying the lecturers. That is why the Accountant General and Minister of Finance became a player in this matter. If ASUU have done a community development with their councils and have generated enough money to pay everybody working in that system transparently and equitably and fairly, the Ministry of Education and the Accountant General Office wouldn't even see them. They wouldn't even know what is called IPPIS and no IPPIS. But the man in the Accountant General Office and Minister of Finance, managing the entire economy, says we're losing a lot of money by taking money from our federal budget and going to pay in the universities. There are ghost workers in the universities, people who are not working, they are named in the payroll. There is duplication in payment. There are lecturers who teach in 5 universities. We want to introduce a system that will stop them from doing that. There are people in library and the other places who are non-academic staff. They are taking monies for allowances that are not approved by national salaries and incomes and wages. And that is why we have this humongous personnel budget and bill. We want to stop it. We are introducing this system for all public servants in Nigeria. That's how it came. Otherwise, if the universities were generating their own money and paying themselves, nobody will be talking to them about IPPIS and no IPPIS. So for me, I think it's a question of 6 as a number and half a dozen.
Well, on that note,
the Governing Council, as members are talking about, are appointed by Mr. President and can be dissolved by Mr. President without recourse to anybody.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Senator Chris Ngige, Nigeria's Minister of Labor and Employment. Thank you for joining us on THISDAY Live here on Arise News. We'll take a short break now. When we return, the program will continue. Welcome back to THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Joining me now in the studio are Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies; Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough; Chike Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State; and Professor Victor Areole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Well, Prof. Yemi and Chike Ogea, you listened to that conversation with the Minister of Labor and Employment on the issues of ASUU strike. But Professor Areole, let me start with you. You raised quite a number of issues about university autonomy and how, the Constitution is superior to even the Universities Autonomy Act. And he talked about university teachers like you who in fact have their children in schools abroad and in private universities. And yet you are accusing government officials who have their children within the public university system of not listening to ASUU. And a number of other issues. I don't want to provide a summary. We all had them.
Well, the point is, when it comes to university autonomy, we have known that universities all over the world operate on a given budget to account for what they are able to do with budget given, measurements set, and results released every year. So when you now say you are adding them into civil service process, there wouldn't be anything to measure or to bring out as result at the end of the year. University is not a civil service organization. It's meant to produce results that has some international orientation that can also be assessed and seen in the best practices that all universities over the world are seeing. I mean, Nigerian universities are also assessed, like they assessed all universities in the whole world, under the template or the template used for assessing universities and their quality and their values. We know that Nigerian universities lag behind. They are about 1,000 or whatever you call, however it is said, and they have not come up to first 100 of the world. And there is a need for the government to really look into it. Without autonomy, or call it quasi-autonomy, in the sense that somebody is saying that we don't pay our, the council cannot pay the staff, which is not true. Because, for example, in the University of Lagos where I operate, if you are to admit about 6,000 students every year, which is possibly the capacity carrying possibility of the university, it means then that those people are to be catered for, to be paid for. And it's like federal government ought to know that if through JAMB you are to bring in 6,000 students into the university system, you must tell us how much you are going to use in keeping those 6,000 students in the system. And that will also be part of saying they are paying. But then ASUU is saying, if you just allow it to be market forces-driven payment system, the poor people won't have access to university. And it's true. And that's why this semi-autonomy thing, if not total autonomy that is expected, still require government to understand that university is not a cost center. It is investment as well as profit center. Because some people view it as cost center, expenses. Like he said, the finance minister and the accountant general are looking at it from the point of view of ghost workers. I wonder, ghost worker, for example, I know as a person, up to 7 or 5 or 3, depending on which area one is operating in the university, of course it's attached to me. There is no way you can be talking about me being a ghost worker when those courses are still available in the university, they are not cancelled, and human beings are still offering them. There is nothing like ghost worker in the university system per se. It's their own imagination. You can talk of ghost worker when you are talking of auxiliary servants, in terms of non-academic servants who are maybe in the bursary or in the registry or whatever. But when it comes to real teaching and research, there is nothing like ghost workers. You can't find them. So the essence of having really autonomy is important. And that's the only way the poor children can only have access to the university system.
Well, Professor Akinterewa, I mean, you were also an ASUU member before you retired. But from what we have heard from Senator Chris Ngige and the offer made to ASUU, do you think that there is any hope that this impasse will end soon?
Well, before we talk about impasse, I think let me put on record that I admire Senator Ngige because he spoke not only as a conciliator, not only as a reconciliator, but also as a conspirator, meaning that Professor Ogunyemi, the ASUU chairman, was not in any way wrong. Let's look at it as a conspirator. He spoke as a politician, and I could now see the linkage between him as a APC stalwart and you, Ruben Abati, as a will-be, probably not deputy governor. Why not even governor? Because you said amen too. But let's quickly look at what he said. For instance, on university autonomy, he told us that he was not a lawyer, but he admitted that law itself is 99% common sense. Now, it means now that of the 99%, he now gave us an analysis, taking us back to section 171, all these laws, all along. So he, in extempore, even spoke as a lawyer, meaning now that contrary to his self-presentation as a non-lawyer, he is a learned person. The second one, he talked about membership of the ASUU being voluntary according to International Labour Convention. He's quite right. It's free. The same thing, the question to ask him is this. You are free to belong to ASUU. You are free to belong to the PDP or APC. But the ground norm, the superior law itself, even the electoral law in Nigeria, does not, in fact, penalizes. It punishes people who do not belong to a political party. You cannot do anything, you cannot aspire to be anything if you do not register with a political party. Now, meaning by implication that the law itself, which does not provide for independent candidacy, is punishing. So, if people do not belong to ASUU by choice, in the same way people could not that they do not want to belong to, they do not, I want to be president of Nigeria, what is wrong? But I do not necessarily believe I should belong to APC or any party. But the law does not allow for that. So in this case, when he's now trying to give the impression that people may not be compelled or forced to join the ASUU, what about the law that systemically does not allow people, all right, to belong when you really want to belong? He talked about his children being in the public school. He also added the point that they have dual nationality. The mere fact that his children do have a dual nationality is most unfortunate, because in the theory, in international law, when you have more than one nationality, 2 or 3 nationalities, the issue always at stake is the principle, the theory of effective nationality. Which nationality is more effective that you have been taken to? He didn't tell us whether his children are in the Nigerian public schools or in the public schools of the other countries. So I'm left in iota of doubts that in this case we don't know.
No, he made it clear that because they have dual nationality, if they are chosen, they could have gone to study in the United States. When he said public universities, he was referring to the Nigerian public university system.
I am aware of that. I'm
and
just
it's not
trying
a
to
crime in Nigeria to have dual nationality.
Look, you see,
as you well know.
Well, I am aware of all these points. The point I'm trying to build is this. I'm trying to say that Senator Chris Ngige spoke not just as a conciliator, not just as a conciliator, but also as conspirator. In this case, that he has vested interest as a politician because he spoke in this case. Now, if you look at, you are talking about increase in the funding of revitalization all along. There is no increase there.
Anyway,
because
quickly,
he told
let me
us,
take Chike Ogea, who is also on standby. Chike Ogea, your take as a parent.
Well, I'm happy we have 2 professors today. One is living the experience, one has lived it, and then like Professor Akinterenwa said, we now have a minister who obviously, being the conciliator, is the one, trying to sort out this whole thing. Well, my take is simple. I had 2 degrees from the University of Lagos. I finished both in record 3-year periods I was supposed to. I went to Nigerian Law School for 1 year, and I also finished in the 1 year I was supposed to do it. And the quality of education we had at that time was comparable to the best anywhere in the world, either in the European countries or in the Americas. Whether that can be said about the Nigerian system today, I'm not sure. And the reasons are not far-fetched. These are the reasons we are dealing with right now. We're having situations where students have to stay at home for months on end because there's this situation, where the funding of tertiary education in Nigeria is becoming a big problem. Yes, we have a lot of private universities like the minister adduced to, but that can never, that's the mistake we should not make in Nigeria. Private universities can never take the place of public citadels as universities of excellence all over the world. They are there, and that is why, by reputation, these universities, like in Nigeria, whether we like it or not, the first 5 universities that were built just around independence, Lagos, Zaria, Ibadan, Ife, and the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. These universities are things we should do everything we can in Nigeria, both the governed and the government, to make sure we keep them in those heights they were supposed to be. And you see, this goes again to the law we talk about, what is on the concurrent legislative list, what can we do to restructure the country so we can free more monies for education. Obviously, just like the minister was trying to say, there is a situation in Nigeria where, of course, with the global challenges and all we have to do with monies in our budget, there is insufficient funds for education. And if you ask me, education and health should be most likely the top priority of the things we should be doing now. And whatever we need to do, including, like I said, looking at those lists and making whatever adjustments we need to make and get enough money to fund a tertiary institution so we can maintain that level of excellence that these universities have attained.
And, you cannot be more correct.
Sorry?
I say you cannot be more correct. But before we move on, I would like to bring in Yemi Adamolekun. I haven't seen her face on the screen since I introduced her. Yemi, thank you for joining us. ASUU.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, so you just want my general take?
Yes.
Okay. Starting point. We're just very unserious people, really. And I think we need to be clear about that. A country that in 2010 thinks the way to assess the challenges of our tertiary education system is to set up a visitation panel that will then go around each university, sit down, spending money, eating food, and saying things that they already know. At tertiary institutions, are in a coma. We've been sitting at home since March, and people think that what is needed is an assessment. So I think that to me, quite honestly, speaks to how unserious we are about dealing with this problem. I quite agree. I mean, I disagree with Senator Ngige on a lot of things, but I actually quite agree with him on 2 things, I would say. Number one, that government alone cannot fund tertiary education, not secondary, not primary. And we've seen it in the number of primary schools that have come up. I mean, I'm a product of a federal government college. Started my education there, ended my education at a high school that was on the campus of the University of Ife. But it's clear that the government can't fund it, which is why we have private schools at the primary school level, at the secondary school level, and at the tertiary education level. Lagos has more private primary schools than it has public primary schools, and that alone tells you a lot. So that is our approach, is to do assessments where documents are endless. From when the former INEC chair, Professor Yakubu, was head of TET Fund, to when Antiope Ezekwesili was Minister of Education, there are documents that document what our challenges are. We're just not serious. That's number one. Number two, the whole notion of the fact that we don't have money. And I can understand to a certain degree, let me even say that the government says that the amount of money that we need to fund world-class universities, world-class primary schools, world-class secondary schools, the government just doesn't have it. But as we've seen with, again, the NSAS protest and police brutality issues, the government has lost so much trust that people just don't believe that you don't have money. When you continue to spend money on useless things, you continue to have a National Assembly that's driven by not only salaries, but allowances that make no sense, that we can't see it. When you have a speaker that has a 20-member convoy acting like idiots until they shoot and kill someone. So when you have things like that happening, an honest conversation about what it is that government honestly wants to do and what it's then able to do is quite different.
Chance to talk about the NSAS protests and developments shortly. So sorry to interrupt you. Let's go straight to that subject since you've already mentioned it. As the Judicial Panel of Inquiry and Restitution set up by the Lagos State government to probe police brutality and the shooting of peaceful protesters at the Lekki Toll Plaza on the night of October 20, 2020, entered its 11th day, the Nigerian Army finally admitted that live ammunition was deployed on the night of the shooting to disperse protesters. In the aftermath of the shooting, the Army had initially denied any involvement, describing reports of the incident as fake news, before backtracking and saying that soldiers were present, but fired their weapons in the air and used blanks, not live rounds. However, on Saturday, the commander of 81st Military Intelligence Brigade, Brigadier General Ahmed Taiwo, informed the judicial panel that a portion of the troops that operated at the toll gate on that night were indeed armed with live bullets, but maintained that only blank bullets were shot into the air. The latest admission by the Nigerian Army effectively confirmed mounting concerns that the institution, saddled with the responsibility of security in the country, lacks transparency and cannot be trusted. Its habit of veering away from the truth and later admitting its complicity also raises questions over the credibility of its testimony that no person was killed by the troops on the night of October 20. So, Yemi, I'll come back straight to you since you first mentioned the topic before I gave the narrative. After the VT, we'll come back to you. So let's...
The Judicial Panel of Inquiry sat for the 11th day at the Court of Arbitration, starting with the viewing of the footage from the night of the Lekki shootings. Legal counsel for NSAS protesters Adeshino Ogunlanu requests for it to be played from 5 p.m. to 7:59 p.m. At 6:42 p.m., some protesters can be seen running away, while others are trying to create a barrier between them and the military. The atmosphere in the courtroom gets intense when the protesters huddle together and the military continue to close in on them. Brigadier General Ahmed Taiwo then testifies that the soldiers deployed to the Lekki tollgate were indeed armed with live bullets, but maintained they were shot in the air and not at protesters.
We're talking of guns. We are talking of high caliber guns. Okay. They were carrying rifles, not guns, or anti-tank guns, as you may want to say.
Pardon my ignorance. The bullets you shoot you use for the rabbit blank, is that
correct?
Or which other one?
Life.
Ogunlanu then requests for General Taiwo to watch videos where protesters are being fired at to reaffirm if the army used live ammunition.
The soldiers will be given both live and blank bullets. In this particular case, we saw that these protests had been infiltrated by some hoodlums. They were peaceful protesters, no doubt. but they were also the hoodlums who sought to take advantage. That is why they were armed with blank bullets in addition, blank ammunition, in addition to the life they were carrying.
I'm asking you specifically. So at Lekki toll gate, the troops under Colonel Bailey were armed with guns and live bullets.
Yes, my lord.
After General Taiwo is discharged, Justice Okuwobi denies the request of the Lekki Concession Center to evaluate the damage at the Lekki tollgate and adjourns the panel to the 24th of November 2020. Sheiton Atigari, Arise News.
Well, Sheiton Atigari of Arise News reporting live there from the Judicial Panel of Inquiry. Now, Yemi Adamolekun, let me come straight to you, since you were already talking about the NSAS protest. What do you make of this position, latest development?
Thank you. I think I just really want to quickly end on the ASUU matter. I'd spoken about government, but I also wanted to speak to ASUU. ASUU says Academic Staff Union of Universities. And the fact that they think that going on strike for 8 months, and I mean, I think Premium Times had a study that they've literally been on strike for 5 years over the last, since return to democracy, if I'm not mistaken, that this is a legitimate way to push excellence and academic thought in Nigeria. For me, it's a crying shame on those who are members of it. And I dare say that when Minister Ngige was speaking, he said that maybe they will reconsider. All I saw from footage are mostly men. And I would say maybe ASUU needs to get some women so we can make some progress on actually putting the education of Nigerian students above the whims and caprices of a union that seems to be bent on just sorting out its own ideas of what government should or should not be doing, and not taking the bull by the horn and saying, look, this is our institution. We must ensure that it works. We must ensure that it's properly funded, and not be going back and forth with a government that has shown you that it really doesn't care about education. So yes, government should care about education, but this government and previous governments have shown that it's not their priority. So at what point does ASUU then make students and education and thought and thinking its own priority to ensure that Nigeria, as Chike Ogia was saying, goes back to the era of the first generation of universities when UI was University College Ibadan, part of the University College network in the UK. I mean, I'm a campus child. I say that all the time. So my bias is wide as it is deep. And I just think it is really, really very painful that the current crop of university lecturers, that this is what they've turned our universities, and they think it's a thing of pride.
Yes, I'll come back to you, but let me go quickly to Chike Ogia to comment on the latest development with the Lagos Judicial Panel of Inquiry. Chike Ogia, over to you.
Well, I understand Yemi's sentiments there. Like she said, she's a university, she's a daughter of the campus, so I guess, it resonates with her. But coming back to the situation here, I made a comment here that somehow or the other we are looking at a situation where the government seems to continually subvert itself. And, I really wonder what is going on. First, we set up the panel. The government says it has acceded to most of basically the 5 demands of the NSAS protesters. Then, before the panel is even allowed to start unearthing, most of these things that went on, we see a situation where government is blocking the accounts of these youths. We see a situation where government is still not being, up front with the Nigerian public as far as I'm concerned. Because even this, I saw a letter somewhere from the Nigerian army where they tend to purport that, the usual terms of engagement in peacetime, peacekeeping, peacetime management of protest is that you go with both live and blank bullets, but that usually the blank bullets are what is used and the live bullets are not used. But we have also seen situations where we have seen concrete evidence right in front of our eyes of live bullets. Look, I have a lot of friends that live in the Lekki corridor. And I remember at that time, a lot of them were even seeing bullets in their homes, people living inside Lekki. At least I spoke to 3 to 4 people, because at that point in time, we lost a very good friend of ours. And of course, at that period, everything was stifled. We couldn't go and pay our condolences at the right time and all of that. So maybe it lingered for about a week. So there was a time where there were quite a few of us in his house, a friend that had just passed, and people were just narrating their different experiences. So for anybody to say live ammunition were not used on that night, I think that beggars the truth. Now, maybe what they should be concentrating on is who used those live bullets. Because we still have a situation, don't forget, where the Attorney General, I think it was, who actually said that it was hoodlums that were dressed in maybe army camouflage or something that were actually shooting. So with all of this, you begin to wonder where really is the truth. But it is okay because the panel is still sitting, and we still hope that, at the end of it, the truth will come out, and the country will be better for it. Because, we need to heal, and the only way we can heal is to find out what actually happened on that night. That is the truth.
Well, very quickly, before I come to you, Professor Akintenwa, there was his press release today, signed by Oshoba Olaniyi, Major, Acting Deputy Director, 81st Division, Army Public Relations, and it's dated 22nd November 2020. And what is titled Cross-Examination of Brigadier General Ahmed Taiwo on blank and live ammunition by troops of 81st Division, Nigerian Army. And he's just saying basically that it is part of the rules of engagement for soldiers on internal security operations to carry both live and blank ammunition. The use of any of these ammunitions, as stated in our rules of engagement, depends on the level of threat at the operational area. And it goes on to insist that only blank ammunition was fired into the sky and not at the protesters. This is the latest as a follow-up to Brigadier General Taiwo's testimony at the panel of inquiry. Over to you, Prof.
You see, Ruben, what is a lie? What is telling lies? If you want to look at it from a sociological perspective or polymological perspective, we have conscious lie-telling, unconscious lie-telling, incidental lie-telling, and coincidental lie-telling. These 4 categories of lie-telling clearly apply to the Nigerian military. It is very easy to tell lies, but in these 4 cases, it is very, very difficult to sustain them. You need to fabricate more lies to sustain them. So what is happening? Rule of engagement, coming out with press statements, etc. You deny in the morning that you are never involved. In the afternoon, you said there's no shooting. Now you are telling us you can go out with a live bullet and a blank bullet, depending on the level of threats. And at the end of the day, they are just giving us various elements to the whole world to suggest quite well that CNN reports showing clearly that, look, the Nigerian military might have been actually involved. All these things they are telling us, they are only trying to strengthen our belief that actually the Nigerian military had actually not behaved professionally by killing peaceful protesters.
Well, very quickly, within the short time we have left, Professor.
My only worry is that the judicial panel is still on, and they will come out with the truth. But there are worries now. There are inconsistencies in the witnessing ballot box, and the army and the civilian side of it, which is the Attorney General claiming that hoodlums were military fatigue, which is a very big lie that people are contesting now based on what the military people are saying. And secondly, we have known that during during that Lekki incident, 2 military people, their voices were heard, and people have not called them to come and testify. Lieutenant Colonel Bello and Brigadier General Omata. These are 2 basic human beings in the military that could come and say something, and people will say, yes, what you are saying, you were an eyewitness, and it could be taken as clear statement of what could be seen as the real action of the day. Until those 2 people are brought to the witness box in terms of this judiciary panel inquiry, I don't think Nigerians will be satisfied.
Well, thank you, Prof. We'll take another short break here on THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, the program will continue. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show. We go on to the next topic. The agitation for a Nigerian president of Igbo extraction gathered steam last week, following the defection of Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi to the ruling All Progressives Congress APC from the People's Democratic Party PDP. According to Umahi, his decision to depart from the party on whose platform he became governor stemmed from the fact that the PDP had not served the interest of the southeastern section of the country since its establishment 22 years ago. He then went on to accuse his Rivers State counterpart, Governor Nyesom Wike, of remote controlling the PDP and dictating the fortunes of the main opposition party. But in swift rebuttal on this network, Wike dismissed Umahi's allegations, stating that his colleague's decision to leave the PDP was born out of selfish interest and ambition of the Ebonyi State Governor to run for the presidency on the platform of the APC. However, as the governors traded barbs over the issue, speculation was rife that more PDP governors were likely to join Umahi by leaving the PDP for the APC. With all these developments unfolding barely 2.5 years to the 2023 election cycle, the belief is that the 2 major political parties will be forced to address the regional issue of an able presidency in the quest for unity, equity, and justice. Professor Akinterenwa, let me start this topic with you. Is this all about equity and justice, or the ambition of Umahi?
I will agree with you on both points, that it's both of equity, fairness, as well as selfishness. You see, since the end of Nigeria's civil war, there is no reason why we shouldn't have had at least the Igbo people considered for leadership. I am aware that there are some other regions that have not actually been given the opportunity. But, you know, informally, people have been saying that because the Igbo people tried to secede, that unnecessary belief that they never wanted the united Nigeria before is still in the mentality of many policymakers, and therefore they do not want to facilitate any Igbo presidency. This is quite wrong, because what is happening today in Nigeria with the clamor for restructuring clearly suggests that at the end of the day, the Igbo people might have been wiser than any other group of people in Nigeria by wanting to go away. Because people are complaining about injustice, unfairness in the system. You can just imagine, for instance, a situational reality whereby, for instance, the government headed by President Muhammadu Buhari being accused of nepotism. The president doesn't bother. There was this press report that the DSS was recruiting about 700 people, and that 500 of them, at least coming from one regional something, the government, they are not listening to public complaints. And now when you now see people now say, if you continue to hear but you refuse to respond to our complaints, that you do not want restructuring. The president told us that the 2014 report of the National Conference was in his drawers. That's what he told us, that is gathering dust, that he never had time for that. That's the president of the whole nation. So in this case, if the presidency is now an issue, I think it's quite legitimate that, look, at the end of the day, Nigeria is for all of us. It's not just for some people. And now, when you look at the issue of the aspect of selfishness, etc., all along, if there is supposed to be Igbo presidency, we are going to have an Igbo president who will now be president of Nigeria after election. The issue is that, what is it that might have been said to have warranted David Umahi to leave PDP? It traces this issue in Nigeria whereby you are PDP in the morning, APC in the afternoon, in the evening you are SDP. No. Even if the law, the Constitution allows for all these things, I think we have arrived at a bus stop where we need to reflect that don't join PDP because you want to contest. Join PDP for whatever ideological position you want to defend. A situation whereby we just change parties, please, it doesn't work.
This is not the first time a politician will cross from one political party to the other. There are two issues here. The Umahi defection and also this big topic about 2023 and Igbo presidency.
Thank you. Just a quick one on NSAS. I think it's critical that as we look at this thing, the fact that the army, and I think it's Prof that said it, continues to lie to make up a previous lie tells us a lot about what happened at the Lekki massacre. Now, so this issue about Governor Umahi, I completely agree with Prof as well. I think it's both issues of equity, justice, ambition, selfishness, personal interest. But at the heart of it really is the fact that between APC and PDP, as we have said several times, is really the difference between 6 and half a dozen. Because shortly after that, a group of APC governors went to visit President Jonathan. The signaling around 2023 is very strong. But I think what I would like Nigerians to look at as we engage on this issue is the fact that the tricks have not changed. As you said, he's not the first one to decamp. He will not be the last. We'll see a lot more as we move forward towards 2023. But I think for those Nigerians who are tired of things remaining as they are, I believe that our current crop of politicians keep reinforcing that they are not offering us anything different. They're just looking for a platform to drive an agenda. Even if it's the turn for an Igbo presidency, let's even push that argument a little bit. Can we then have a discussion around the kind of country that allows people of all ethnic groups, not just Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo, but Ijo, Tiv, Jukun, all big and small, have a stake in a country that we believe is in the interest of all of us? What we have seen consistently, and the studies have been done, when President Obasanjo was president, it's not that the Southwest did any better. When President Yar'Adua was president, not that the Northeast did any, or Northwest rather, did any better. When President Jonathan was president, not that his state, Bayelsa, nor the South did any better. And now with President Buhari, banditry in Katsina is rife. So this whole idea of the fact that we want someone from our area to be in a position of power is the subconscious notion that it means that we will get something out of that position. But data shows empirically that it doesn't happen. So if our issue is the fact that we don't believe we're being fairly treated in this country, then that's what we need to address. And if we're not having these conversations, politicians will do what politicians do.
Yeah, I mean, some people have expressed the view that Igbos seem to be insisting that the presidency must come to them by force. And some people are saying, well, if Igbos won the presidency in 2023, then what they really need to do is to carry other Nigerians along and get the votes of all Nigerians. What do you say to this?
Well, the truth is, like Yemi said, the more things change in Nigeria, the more they remain the same. I happen to be an Igbo person of what they call the South-South extraction, whatever that means in Nigeria, you know. But the truth is that we go back to, I remember a long time ago when I was a child, they used to say something, Wazobia, they called it. And that was supposed to be the three major ethnic groups in Nigeria. Don't forget, Nigeria has at least 250 ethnic groups. So there's supposed to be what we call the Hausas, which is the north, then the Yorubas in the west, and then the Igbos in the east. Now, a situation has arisen, if you remember, after the Abiola debacle, where Moshood Abiola was denied his legitimate right to be the president of this country. And the Southwest felt very, very offended. They didn't expend one bullet. In fact, it was funny that it was the Easterners, the Southeasterners that were fleeing from Lagos at that time that were, you know, having road accidents and, you know, losing their lives on the way. But somehow or the other, the Southwest made it impossible for the country to go on, and it wasn't it wasn't by fluke that we had a situation where both major political parties at that time had not just two Yoruba men as their presidential candidates, but they had two Olus. There was Olu Falaye and Olu Obasanjo, so to speak. And the truth is that that is what I would like to see in 2023. Let's, like the governor of Cross River christened his budget. I think he called it a budget of bliss and blush, or what was it he called it? That's what is happening.
Blush and bliss.
Yeah, blush and bliss. That is what is happening around Umahi. So let's not even go into, you know, the real issues of why Umahi left. Was it for personal reasons or whatever? The truth is...
Welcome back to THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show. Before we went on that break, Chike Ogia was still commenting on the politics of Igbo presidency and 2023 general elections in Nigeria. Chike, back to you, if you may just summarize very quickly so that I can take Professor Ariole here before we move on to the next topic.
Yes, just like I was saying. So the truth is, in all of this, I want a situation where, like I said, both political parties, that would be the best thing for the Southeast, will have a Southeasterner as their candidate. Anything but that will not, I can assure you, knowing how Nigeria works, will still be very far from the target for the Southeasterners. So even if Umahi and all the PDP governors from the Southeast move into the APC, I can assure you that's not going to sort their problem out, because the way Nigeria works, they'll be surprised that overnight, the people they are going to meet will move over to the PDP and then decide to make whoever it is they want to make the president. So what the Southeast should do, which Umahi has taken the first step in doing, so to that extent, I don't mind what he has done. Let there go and be a good presence of Southeasterners in the APC, because like we know, they had put everything they had in the PDP, and they now say, well, the PDP has never considered us for the presidency. Fine. So some of them should go there. They should still leave quite a formidable force in the PDP, and at the end of the day, try to get the nomination of both parties. That is the only way they can achieve that.
Quickly,
anything
Professor.
else will be a long shot.
Quickly, Professor Ariole, so that we can take another topic.
Just because Nigeria has not got any national identity as far as somebody said it's a configuration or geographical setup and
Geographical expression.
expression, and people are just trying to manage that geographical expression. Otherwise, there is no need talking of any extraction from Igbo or Yoruba or whatever coming to be the president of Nigeria. All it says is that Nigeria has, the institutions in Nigeria are very weak. And for now, like they say about Nigerian politicians, is permanent interest. And that permanent interest is accumulation of wealth for personal purposes, or the other way, fear of persecution. It's possible Dave Umahi is afraid of persecution, nobody knows, or is interested in accumulating more wealth to help Ebonyi State, nobody knows. Whether presidency or no presidency come 2023, I don't even see him smelling such a post. With what I know about, I don't see him smelling such a post. So
that point has been made ad nauseam. I have to move on now. I have another topic. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy and oil producer, last week signed a pact with neighboring Niger Republic on petroleum products exports to Nigeria. Making this public, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Mr. Timipre Silva, said a memorandum of understanding was reached following bilateral agreements between Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari and President Mamadou Issoufou of Niger. He said both countries had been in talks for over 4 months through the state-run Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and Niger's Société Nigérienne de Pétrole, Niger, which only started commercial crude oil production in 2011, owns and operates the Zoras refinery in Zinda, 260 kilometers from the Nigerian border. The refinery has an installed refining capacity of 20,000 barrels per day. However, the country's total domestic requirement is estimated at 5,000 barrels per day, thus leaving a surplus of about 15,000 barrels per day, mostly for export. For decades, Nigeria's 3 major refineries have been grounded to near zero capacity utilization, with all of its refined fuel requirements imported from Europe. By turning to Niger to meet part of its domestic demand, Nigeria may very well achieve the objective of providing relatively cheaper fuel to the northern section of the country, but at the same time exporting jobs to its neighbor. Well, Professor Ariole, let me come back to you and start with you on this subject.
Well, Niger Republic, as far as I'm concerned, is like an outpost of Nigeria. Because when you talk of ECOWAS, and when you talk of Niger Republic having 24 million people with a vast land that is even bigger than Nigeria, you see, it makes some economic sense. If we can really be with them and get people taxed who are working there to really support Nigeria economy. I just see it as just another outpost of Nigeria, because the people in Niger Republic are completely down in terms of literacy level, or what do you call it, best HDI indices, human development indices. They are very low. They are still being supported by Nigeria. Nigerian government still builds house, which we know for them. Nigerian government supports them one way or the other. And there are about 8% to 10% Fulani population in Niger Republic. So it's an extension of Nigeria. I see it that way. And there is nothing wrong if we really can allow such things which makes for cheap labor. When you go to Niger Republic, you talk of cheap labor. And so if it is there, and we can use their outposts to help Nigerian economy to grow, nothing wrong. And I find it very, very okay if anything is done to get Niger to be okay, as well as get Nigeria economy to be okay in terms of exporting our expatriates there and bringing in tax back to Nigeria, of course.
Yemi Adamolekun, do you agree with Professor Ariole that it makes economic sense to buy fuel from Niger, just as Minister Amechi said the other time in September, that it makes economic sense for us to build a railway line up to Maradi with Niger?
Well, it makes economic sense to invest in education so we can have educated Nigerians. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers, and that's the truth, but I don't understand the economic sense it makes when we have 3 refineries that we have refused to shut down if they are not working. So we to talk about, going back to what Minister Ngige said about ghost workers and people earning salaries if they work or didn't work. people in Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and Warri Refinery are earning salaries for doing nothing. I think the Auditor General had a report the other day about how much we're spending on refineries that are producing nothing, but yet we want to be buying petroleum products from Niger and building a railway line to that with money we don't have. So yeah, I'm not getting it.
Well, Prof, what's your view?
I do not agree with Professor Ariole. I agree with Yemi Adamalekun. We belong to the same school of thought. Professor Ariole believes that Niger Republic should be considered as an extension. Should be seen as an extension of Nigeria. That, well, to an extent, since if we look at the border itself, you have the Fulani communities on both sides. But don't forget that the word mainmise in French, you know that word. Mainmise, the French are perfectly in control, large influence on the Niger Republic. So in this case, whatever Niger is able to gain from Nigeria, to what extent will that one be? I think Yemi Adamalekun cannot be more correct on this particular issue. We need to understand what is responsible for this new capacity and capability of the Niger Republic to now want to export to Nigeria. Soras, that is, I think the Soras is a Chinese company. It has had a deficit account all along. You know, Soras. Now, the problem, the misunderstanding between Sonidep Société Nigérienne de Produits Pétroliers, that is a parastatal of government established in 1977, has had the monopoly all along. Now, Soras, a Chinese company that is there, as a result of the monopoly of Sonidep, has not been able to operate. So they now decided that to find a solution to it, and you rightly pointed out, capacity, barrels per day, 20,000 barrels per day. Domestic need, 5,000. They now have 15,000 in excess to be exported. And this one has to be shared on the basis of 50% between Soras and Sonidep. So this is what is responsible.
Prof, you've raised the big point, which some Nigerians have raised, which is the Chinese connection. And people are saying, is this about China again? Secondly, you recall that the Kano-Maradi rail line that was proposed, there was also a Chinese dimension to it. But the more important concern for many Nigerians is that, look, if we're relying on refinery in Chad, then, of course, we'll be exporting jobs. We'll be exporting opportunities.
Why the refineries at home are not
working. Now, it's the Chinese who control the oil fields in Agadez, in Niger, and also the Soras company. Anyway, don't let me waste too much time. Chike, let me come to you. What's your take?
Yeah, quickly, you know, I would want to stay in a middle ground between the Professor Akinteriwa school and the Professor Ariole school. For the simple reason is we must be mindful that, you see, the Nigerians, as they are, have more commonalities with some Nigerians than Nigerians have amongst themselves. I hope we understand that to a large extent. And if actually, you know, they have a functional refinery working in Niger Republic at this point in time, where we seem to be unable, hopelessly so, to get any of our public refineries working. What we are hoping on now is for a private refinery that should come on stream and change the game in Nigeria. Then I definitely don't see anything wrong in us, you know, because whether we like it or not, what we normally used to do was take our crude oil out with no value added and bring it and import it back in. So if we can get finished products just from, as far as I'm concerned, even maybe still within Nigeria, And maybe we can explore, I don't know whether it might even be some form of annexure or acquisition or merger or whatever. Because like I said, Niger, like Professor Ariole said, is really an outpost of Nigeria to an extent. So, I am more for the economic benefits. I don't care whether it is the Chinese that are running the oil fields there or whatever, but anything that can improve the standard of living of our people, make it easier for us to get refined products in Nigeria, because if we're getting products from Niger, instead of taking our crude to wherever in South America, wherever those refineries are, and then bringing them back, like I said, that should be able to help us restructure our economy, pending when the private refinery that we're all waiting for comes on stream. Well, that's my take on that.
Well, from Agadem oil field to Soras to rail lines, I guess this conversation will continue. But right now, let's take a short break here on THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, the conversation will continue. Don't go away. Welcome back to THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Chike Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies, University of Lagos, Nigeria. Now, let's take our last topic on today's edition. Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, a leader who was lauded internationally for his reform agenda and forging peace with neighboring Eritrea, now faces the prospect of a civil war. Fighting has been going on for almost 2 weeks, destabilizing the populous country in East Africa, with reports of hundreds dead. The conflict started on November 4th, when the Prime Minister ordered a military offensive against regional forces in Tigray. He said he did so in response to an attack on a military base housing government troops in Tigray. The escalation came after months of feuding between Mr. Ahmed's government and leaders of Tigray's dominant political party. For almost 3 decades, the party was at the center of power before it was sidelined by the Prime Minister, who took office in 2018 after anti-government protests. Mr. Ahmed pursued reforms, but when Tigray resisted, a political crisis ensued. Tigray's leaders see the Prime Minister's reforms as an attempt to centralize power and destroy Ethiopia's federal system. Thousands of civilians have been displaced since November the 4th, when the Prime Minister ordered his military to strike forces in Tigray. Hundreds more are reported to have died, with reports of a civilian massacre. With the communications likely cut off in Tigray, the exact number of casualties is not clear. The Ethiopian government recently announced a 6-month state of emergency in Tigray, but a full-blown civil war could last far longer. Well, Professor Ariole, I'll start with you. What are the issues here? Could it be ethnicity? Could it be insubordination before constituted authority? Could it just be a case of Abiy Ahmed transforming from the charismatic, populist leader that he is known to be to now an authoritarian leader? What are the issues?
Exactly, it's the issue of authoritarian leader, and they're trying to be tyrannical because they have a constitution that allows the 9 regions to operate as a federal units. And when you're operating as federal units, powers are devolved. And so Tigray or Tigrayans, who have been the main power in the center, that is Ethiopian center, saw themselves being marginalized and removed from power and removed from authorities within the central post because Abiy Ahmed saw them as threat. And so they have to go and concentrate in their north section, which is where Tigray is situated. And such area is a it's a conflagration ground because they could fight with Eritrea as well as Sudan. And these are areas where there are, in short, war zones in Africa. Whether Eritrea or in Sudan, there are some pockets of war going on there. And whatever this IB is trying to do, it's going to create a bigger war. Because what the Constitution says is that the 9 regions should be given right to decide on how they want to govern their region. And it is a test of regionalism, just like Nigeria should know, claiming a federal state or federal government of Nigeria, and that federation is not working. And we see some tyrannical people in Abuja, lording it over the whole federation. The same thing Abiy is trying to introduce in Ethiopia, and it's definitely not going to work. And so it has to be stopped.
Well, Professor Akintola, could this also be a case of the leaders of Tigray having withdrawn from power at the center, feeling some kind of withdrawal, and they think that they should dictate? Because they've accused Prime Minister Ahmed of victimizing their people, of accusing them of corruption, of removing them from important positions, and then they say, okay, if that is the case, we'll make things difficult for you. When the elections were postponed, well, legitimately, if you like, the people of Tigray said, no, you can't postpone the elections. They went ahead and held their own elections and then organized militia and started attacking military installations. Is Abiy Ahmed really at fault?
I thank you for giving me the elements that I require to provide you the analytical response. You and Professor Arioli are quite right on this particular matter. The issue, if you look at it chronologically, in 2018, after about 3 decades, their party, the Tigrayan Liberation Front, you see, they've been there for long. Now, when Abiy Ahmed was appointed in 2018, that time, the leader of Tigray itself had wanted to be the prime minister. But Abiy Ahmed was the luckiest candidate. Take note of that particular one. The second point is the federal system of government that Professor Arioli rightly pointed out. And I think that factor is what the people of Nigeria should be very, very mindful of to learn lessons. Because what is at stake here now, Tigray, as one of the 9 regions, Tigray as the most critical, virtually the most important region in Ethiopia by virtue of its international character, by virtue of the fact that it's a cultural site for UNESCO. The mere fact that by 1,606 years ago, all those things, you still have, the... one
of the oldest kingdoms.
Yes, Sukrin, how they call it. So when you take all this into consideration, if you bear in mind that the leader of Tigray itself is said to be a guerrilla veteran, I think that in this particular case, there is the need to be very, very cautious, simply because Nigeria, we claim to be operating federal system. And that is what they are fighting for.
Yes, it's important, Prof, that you've drawn attention to lessons that we can learn from what is happening in Ethiopia. But Chike, let me come to you quickly. Isn't there also another lesson in terms of how the people of Tigray have been able to put together 250,000 strong militias who are standing up to the national army? And here in Nigeria, people are saying, let us also have state police, let us have security networks. Is there a lesson for us in that regard?
Yeah, for me, Ruben, I think the most important thing about this thing is because if we're having these kind of issues with Ethiopian federalism, which was supposed to be the best, I think, in Africa, so to speak, not the feeding bottle type we tend to practice here. If that is also not working in Ethiopia, then maybe the whole of Africa should now begin to consider that maybe, either the federal structure is not what is required in Africa, maybe because of our norms, our culture, the kind of people we are, ties to ethnicity and all of that. So if you asked me, be that as it may, whatever forces they have, and it's all struggle for power and all of that, which just holds Africa back as far as I'm concerned.
On that note, Chike Ogia, Yemi Adamolekun, Prof, the two professors will have to go. Thank you very much. You've been watching THISDAY Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team and I here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week.